their needs. Asking this question yields answers that go beyond pollution minimization. For example, rather than pursuing energy efficiency, thinking seriously about sustainability should lead companies towards shifting as far as possible toward renewable alternatives. And it should raise questions about what the business actually does. If it is using non-renewable resources for its value creation, how should it consider the opportunity cost of using these resources now, rather than leaving them for the use of future generations? In other words, how should it integrate the time dimension of sustainability, rather than simply considering environmental impact today? The time dimension of sustainability has been forgotten by many a sustainable business advocate. In the worst cases, sustainable business has come to mean the longevity of the firm itself, rather than the company's contribution to creating the conditions that would enable longevity in the meeting of need. But endurance is no indicator of contribution to sustainability. In fact, the opposite is likely to be true. There are plenty of long-lived firms out there, enduring corporate persons, slowly making the planet inhospitable for everyone else, including their executives and employees. Oil and gas companies are a case in point here. ExxonMobil, for example, has existed in one form or another for nearly 150 years, making an enormous contribution to planetary destruction. Creative, erroneous, or self-serving interpretations of sustainability cloud what is at stake when we talk of sustainable business, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Companies must first understand what sustainability really means before they can clarify their potential contribution to it. This requires understanding the ecological context in which the firm's activities and all economic activity takes place. I describe this context and the challenges it poses in part 1 of this book. Even when sustainability has been more fully understood, it has often failed to reorient firms towards a less environmentally destructive path. Why? Paradoxically, advocates for sustainable business have often been part of the problem. Many well-meaning sustainability practitioners try very hard to speak the language of business, which they think is essential in order to reach executives. Sustainability is then sold to business on the basis of a business case. Companies, they argue, should embrace a sustainable agenda for the sake of reputational risk management, or securing a social license to operate, or even for brand positioning. These arguments aim to demonstrate that environmental inaction could be costly, while positive steps could be lucrative. Alas, this is simply not the case. Crucially, the so-called business case for sustainability is the exception rather than the rule. Often today, it makes more financial sense to conduct business unsustainability, barely scraping by on legal environmental compliance while avoiding changes to practice that often result in unacceptable cost increases. In fact, a survey conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, found that only 1/3 of companies that have developed a business case for sustainability reap any financial rewards for their efforts. In other words, for the remaining 2/3 of companies, a business case did not exist after all, even when they tried to formulate one. And these are companies that sought to develop a case. Many more do not have such enthusiastic leadership. The absence of a business case raises some problematic questions. What now? What should a firm do when sustainability does not pay? That is, in the majority of cases, most of the time. Incidentally, the fact that sustainability does not pay should be amply apparent from current private sector practices. If it did, we would no doubt be living in a much different world and not facing our difficult ecological predicament. Usually, sustainability initiatives that go beyond environmental compliance are simply shelved, and companies either aim for regulatory compliance or for getting away with non-compliance, depending on where they are, the likelihood of getting policed, and whichever is cheapest. The business case approach is problematic because it implies that sustainability makes sense because and when it makes commercial sense. This leads to all sorts of methodologies, frameworks, and cost-benefit analyses, all supposedly seeking to balance environment, society, and financial returns. Sustainability is approached as a negotiation, a balancing act, and trade-off between different courses of action, each with their own economic, social, and environmental benefits and disbenefits, and each with their own price tag.